Hello and welcome to Nottingham College TV. I'm Farron.
And I'm Vanessa.
And we're here with Darren Simpson. So hi Darren, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Hello.
Hiya. So before starting to write books for young adults, you released a novel for adults called Dust on the Moth. Was there any reason for changing to writing books for young adults instead?
I'd say it was a combination of good advice from my agent and desperation. So I'd always written for adults originally, and The Dust on the Moth was one of those stories. And then I wrote a couple of books down the line from that. I wrote a book which became Scavengers in the end.
Yeah.
And that was for adults originally, and it's about, the main character was the adult in the story, raising a child in a kind of a sort of industrial wasteland kind of scenario. And my agent liked it, but she said, the kid in this story is actually far more interested than the adult. What about if you flipped the story around and had the child as the focus? We could maybe pitch this to children's publishers. Yeah. And it was something I never ever imagined doing. But by that time I'd written about 4 books without that much luck, so I was quite desperate to try anything really. So I did it, and then I finally got my first book deal, so it kind of worked that way. And again, it was a bit unnerving because I'd never planned to write for children, but actually it's a really happy accident because it's a really great audience to write for, and I really love all the stuff that comes with it in terms of visiting schools and meeting young people. And it's kind of weirdly slightly more open-minded readership than you might get sometimes in adult genres.
Really?
Yeah, just because I find my books they play a bit loose with genre sometimes, and for some reason the children's market is a bit more open to that kind of playfulness and looseness than sometimes you get in some adult genres. So it's worked out quite well. And I still like to revisit adult fiction and stuff, but I've really enjoyed writing for young people overall.
Yeah, so even though you enjoyed writing for young people, it seems to work out really well for your success and everything. Do you think you would ever try and write for adults again, or would you stick strictly off it? I
think so, not just because it's kind of what I started off doing, and I probably still read primarily fiction for older readers too, but I think for me it's kind of almost a box to tick. I'd like to keep on writing for young people, but I would also like to kind of get a few adult books in my CV as well, if you know what I mean. Just because I've got certain ideas that would lend themselves more to, obviously, as much as there are certain freedoms with writing for young people, there are obviously, in terms of sort of how dark you can get or certain themes you can approach for adult readership, there's more you can do there. So they have ideas that lend themselves to that. So yeah, I would like to revisit that. I've got some ideas that I would like to approach at some point, but right now the momentum is all kind of with the stuff for younger readers. So I'm going with that for now.
Yeah, it makes sense, really.
Yeah. So talking about Scavengers, it was your debut and it was released in 2019. It was a Guardian bestseller. How did that make you feel?
Pretty good.
Yeah, I can imagine.
No, it felt good. Actually, as much as I'd like to say I was kind of, I was like ecstatic and jumping around, which I was a little bit, but mostly it was just relief. I think I remember because obviously Dust on the Moth was quite a small crowdfunded thing, and after that I wrote 2 more books that didn't really go anywhere, and I was quite close to giving up, if I'm honest. I actually remember sitting in Nottingham Contemporary, not too far from here, my wife saying this Scavengers book, I think it's probably my last shot because it's just not worth the time I'm putting into it. It's not really paying off. And so when I got an email from agents saying this publisher want to take this book on, and it started obviously getting received really well. It was like a dream come true. But again, I was excited, but I was just relieved. I was so relieved that all those years had paid off. It kind of meant that none of those books that didn't get published were wasted. They were all practice that led to something in the end, which is what I always tell young creatives anyway. Everything you do doesn't work out, it's never wasted. It will always lend itself towards your success in the end, So
you learn from your experience.
Absolutely, yeah. So nothing that fails as such is ever wasted. It's all part of the journey, Yeah. So yeah, when I got all the good reviews and the kind of things that came with Scavengers, I was over the moon, but mostly I was just really, really happy to finally have to pulled it off in the end. I felt very, very lucky as well, very privileged.
So you'd say that definitely motivated you to write further? Yeah,
I'd say so. So I had ideas after that where, I'd finally got my foot in the door. I had some other ideas floating around, which I suddenly had a publisher and an editor to pitch those to. So yeah, it made sense to sort of keep going and build upon that. That was the idea.
So, outside of your own books, what authors have you been inspired by, or have inspired you, outside of maybe your writing, but in your own life?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's kind of a tricky one because my reading is really, really eclectic, and I've never really sort of read one author I thought, this person makes me want to write. But I guess because I do write for younger audiences, I think back to stuff that I enjoyed when I was a younger reader, and Roald Dahl was a really, really big deal for me. I think just because I'd never come across I think when being very young reading The Twits by Roald Dahl, and I couldn't believe how grotesque and cruel and funny it was, you know, and that was quite new to me at the time, and that really opened my, and I started like devouring Roald Dahl books after that, and all the sort of play with language, the made up words, which found that its way into Scavengers in ways, a lot of made up words in Scavengers. So I think Roald Dahl was a very sort of formative influence in terms of making me a very keen reader, which fed into my writing, you know. Beyond that, I remember I grew up in army estates, and there was no British libraries. I was in Germany, and we had so I ran out of some children's books to read, and all I had was, YA wasn't really such a thing back then. It was just my mum's bookshelves, and my mum had lots of Stephen King and like horror writers, so I started reading a lot of adult horror stuff. So I think Stephen King was a really big influence, and I sort of revisit this stuff now as an older reader and find a lot more in it, you know. So I'd say those two are sort of very formative influences in terms of writers that influenced me, yeah.
So, we've talked about, you know, books that have influenced you and books that you favourite, but what about your own books? You know, do you have a favourite? Why?
Oh, that's really, really hard. I mean, often it tends to be the last one I've written, because that's the one I've been mostly immersed in recently, and that's the one that feels like it feels like a consolidation of all I've learned from writing my previous books and stuff. So right now I'm super excited about Thirst, which has just come out very recently. And for me, I'm very fond of it because it's kind of a slightly new area for me. It's for slightly older readers. It's quite an explicit shift into folk horror, which is a bit of a new thing for me, which has allowed me to indulge in some of that more kind of grotesque stuff I like writing, you know. So I think Thirst, I am very, very proud of, very happy with. But I mean, they're all very different. They mean different things to me. But I think Scavengers I have a massive soft spot for, just in the sense it was that kind of book that turned things around suddenly. So I've got a lot of emotional value attached to that. But yeah, I mean, they're all quite different, so I can't really choose a favourite. But right now, Thirst is very much, you know, very particularly fond, I guess, right now.
So have you always had a passion for writing since you were young, or is it something you've only really developed later in life?
It did come later, really. I've always been a keen reader. I always read lots. I used to love reading. I still read tons now for obviously entertainment and mental health and all sorts, you know. But no, I started writing quite late. I was in bands most of the time. I played drums, and my dream was to be I always wanted to do creative, and I love being in bands, the sort of social side of it, the instant creativity with sort of mates, I guess. But I think after a while, around my mid-20s, I got a bit frustrated with relying on bandmates to get things done. I thought, what can I do creative all by myself? I was always rubbish at art, and I couldn't afford sort of expensive electronic equipment. So I thought, writing, you know, I love reading, why not give it a go? And I remember from the very first night I sat down on this cheap laptop I'd got second hand and just started a short story. I was just in love with it instantly, just because I couldn't believe all the possibilities you can explore with so little. Yeah. There's an amazing economy to writing where you can just do so much with so little, and I still love that now. And also I found myself very relaxed after writing. It kind of it's almost like you get a bit of a Zen state where you're so focused on it that everything else kind of disappears, and so it's quite healthy.
In the zone.
Yeah, and it's quite healthy in that sense, and I think I still get that from writing now. So I think I tried it as an experiment around my mid-20s, and I just fell in love with it straight away and got quite obsessed with kind of doing it for a living and sharing stories, I guess.
So going back to your book Thirst, it involves quite a lot of folklore and things, and some of your other books also involve that. Is that, you know, is there a reason for that? Are you really interested in folklore?
It's something I've always had, a passing interest in. I like old stories. I like kind of old bogeymen and kind of creepy stories from the past, and all the sort of folklore stuff that's fed into a lot of the horror stuff we have today, I guess. Ideas, I guess, like vampires and zombies and stuff. But I think it's the more obscure stories that interest me, the very local stories. And I think what happened is after Furthermore, I decided it'd be fun to try and write a horror story, just because I like reading horror, and I thought it'd be fun to sort of just like commit to the genre. And I think in terms of a type of genre, folk horror appeals to me because I think folk horror, it ties into such ancient beliefs that are very much part of our cultural DNA. You know, a lot of people, I think, for example, you get sort of fantasy genre where everything's magical and there's magic systems. But when I think about folk magic, you think about superstitions we still have today. We still cross our fingers, we still count magpies.
It's very real, like...
That's what I mean. There's something that's earthy and real about it, something relatable. Even in such a different age that we live in now compared to those stories back then, we still know like Jack and Jill, we still know Red Riding Hood. These things are still such part of our lives. And because of that, I think folk horror is a bit scary because it does tap into like an almost subconscious cultural DNA we've got, if that makes sense. So I thought if I was going to write horror, I'd draw on folklore just because it resonates somehow in a very deep way.
Everyone can kind of read it and feel the fear.
I think so.
It's just, it doesn't matter what culture you're part of, folklore is there.
Yeah, it's such a universal, it's so local but also so universal. And that's what I noticed when I was researching folklore, you get a lot of ideas that are very local to one place, but versions of it will exist all around the world, which shows kind of there's a very universal, it taps on very universal ideas of community and fear and stuff, you know. So I think that's why I chose folklore. I've always been interested in it, but also it's so rich. So when you start actually researching it to get ideas for books, there's so many layers to it, you know. So I just found it was just a really rich kind of place to sort of dig into and use and adapt to writing horror stories. So folklore is something to go that deep into. It's kind of new to me, but it's I feel there's so much more I can take out of it. It's amazing.
Yeah. So you released your new book, Thirst, so going on from that, about 2 weeks ago. How's the response been so far?
The response has been really nice so far. I've been super nervous because it's kind of too early to tell. Like there's been lots of nice reviews online and stuff, and it's kind of made its way into sort of like, I guess, so it's got good reviews in certain periodicals that are focused on children's fiction and librarians and that kind of thing. So it's still gone down really well. A lot of people have been genuinely shocked by how scary some of it is, which is kind of sort of satisfies a slightly childish part of me to be able to shock people a little bit. So yeah, it's gone down really, really well. But one thing I've learned is that you can't really tell in the early days. Sometimes a book can make so much noise when it first comes out, but it's really the long game that counts. So as much as I'm enjoying the noise right now and the nice reviews and stuff that come in, you can never really tell maybe like till years down the line how a book has really gone down, because if it's still hanging around, if people are still talking about it down the line, if it's still finding its way into classrooms down the line, if you get a sudden a rise in sales, like, you know, years down the line. That's what I kind of look for.
You know it's a success.
It's the long-term thing, yeah. So I can't judge just yet. So I'm really enjoying kind of how it's going down so far. And yeah, people have been really enjoying it. And it's reached a new audience in terms of like, it's kind of, you know, kind of YA audience. A lot of bloggers and Instagrammers who specialise in spooky stuff and horror stories are sort of getting quite into it and sharing that. So it's nice to see it's nice to sort of open up into a new area, I guess, a little bit. So scary to sort of have the change, but also exciting. So I can't tell how it'll go. We'll have to wait and see. All I can do is sort of leave it to do its own thing and distract myself by working on something new, I guess, sooner or later.
So one last quick question. For those younger people who are wanting to go into writing and hopefully be successful, do you have any advice for them?
So my advice for young writers usually boils down to some very, very simple, because I wouldn't tell anyone how to write, but I tell them what might help their chances. So I think, for example, reading a lot will always help, because and that doesn't mean like reading a book, you don't have to read like your favourite books and think about how does this work. Just reading stories for pleasure, you will sort of soak up how storytelling works and what you like and what you can apply yourself. You know, so reading lots definitely counts. I think just practicing and realising that it is something you have to practice, and to not be hard on yourself if you're not pleased with your first results. It's not a gift, it's a skill, like playing football or getting good at a computer game. That's what I say. So if you are not happy with your first results, don't be precious. It's just start, keep going, and you will see yourself get better. It's a natural thing that will happen. And the main thing, coming back to, I guess, how long it took me to get published, is just perseverance. Perseverance is so, so key, because it can take a long time. A lot of writers on average might write maybe 2, 3, 4 books before they finally get a book deal with one of them. But again, that sounds a bit grueling, but it's not, because like I said before, it's all practice. So I would say don't be disheartened, just enjoy yourself all the way. Write what you care about, what you enjoy, because then you're having a good time, and that's going to show in the text. And then keep practicing, and you will get better and better. And then eventually your perseverance will meet a little bit of luck, you know, the right agent, the right editor seeing your thing and thinking, this is for me, you know, and then it all come together. So yeah, those are the key things I say. Read lots, make sure you're enjoying your writing, see it as practice, and persevere until a bit of luck comes and helps you out, you know.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Darren, for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for watching, and see you next time.